We're actually recording this episode from the PodSpot studios. Shouts out to my good friend Raymond Mosley, the proprietor here at the PodSpot. He's opened up his doors to us, and we're recording this week's edition right here at the PodSpot.
Turn it up, turn it up, turn it proud, turn it proud. You locked in, thinking out loud. Yeah, mic check, new thought on deck. Big brain talk, cut through the noise, no stress. From the couch to the car to the crowd, we flip one small spark to a whole new sound. Got questions, we press them, address them. Laugh, learn, level up, that's the blessing. Every topic on the table right now, welcome to the wave. Thinking out loud. Let's go. Thinking out loud, say it, don't hide it. If it's on your mind, we gon' talk about it. From the first idea to the last rundown, you tune to the show, thinking out loud. Thinking out loud, ride that vibe. If it's on your heart, we gon' let that fly. Turn the volume up, shake the whole town. You rockin' with the show, thinking out loud. Hey!
Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show. And of course, I'm your host, author, motivational speaker, and minister Michael Nimmons. And guys, we're so very excited that you tuned in to this brand new, very special edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show. And of course, those of you who are watching us on our YouTube channel, you can see we're in a completely different space. We're actually recording this episode from the PodSpot studios. Shouts out to my good friend Raymond Mosley, the proprietor here at the PodSpot. He's opened up his doors to us, and we're recording this week's edition right here at the PodSpot. Guys, I'm encouraging each and every one of you under the sound of my voice, if you're a podcaster or a new podcaster and you're looking for a place to record, the PodSpot studio is the place for you. Just give him a call at 248-483-4866 or hit him up on his email at info@thepodspot.studio. And I guarantee you they're going to give you the 5-star treatment. But in this week's edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show, guys, we're going to be calling the Wellness Check Part 2 edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show. The post-primary election just happened a couple of weeks ago, and we felt it was important that we sit down and talk about the primary election, what the implications for this upcoming November general election, not just in the state of Michigan, but even around the country, because there are going to be changes that are coming. And I guarantee you it's going to shake up Washington. So we're going to be talking about that throughout this entire episode. In fact, the first segment, we're going to be talking about politics as unusual. We typically say politics as usual, but in this particular case, we're saying politics as unusual because there are a lot of things that happen. We're going to talk about some contested races in the state of Michigan, some interesting things that took place. I want to bring it to your attention in the first segment of this week's episode. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about a rising star in the Democratic Party, a man by the name of Dr. Abdul. So he's a part of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and he's doing some big things in the Democratic Party. He won a contested race against Haley Stevens, who's considered a part of the Democratic establishment, but he's calling for unity. And we're going to talk about what that means, what that looks like for this November election as well. And then rounding out the 3 topics for this week's Wellness Check Part 2 edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show, we're going to be talking about what is the strategy, or what should the strategy be for Democrats in November for us to win back the House and the Senate in this November. So we got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to unpack. So glad that you have tuned in to this week's edition of the Wellness Check Part 2 edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show. And as I said, in this first segment, we're talking politics as unusual because there are some interesting things that took place a couple weeks ago, August the 4th, that really shook up not just Michigan politics, but politics around the country that's calling attention to and has all eyes on this battleground state right here in Michigan. One great example of that is the governor's race. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson pretty much trounced her Democratic opponent, Christopher Swanson. She won, and this is just in the city of Detroit, by 90% of the vote. And Christopher Swanson only got 9%. But what was interesting to me is in her speech, she talked about this primary election in the state of Michigan being one of the largest, if not the largest, in Michigan history, the turnout, which is incredible. And what it shows me and what it tells me is that Michigan voters are sick and tired of being sick and tired. They are ready for a change, not just in the state of Michigan. Of course, we have a Democratic governor here, but Washington, we need a change in Washington. And we're sending a message to the politicians in Washington that we're coming in November. Get ready, because change is coming. In the words of Sam Cooke, a change is going to come. And November 3rd, that's when that change is coming. And just as a side note, those of you who are watching us on our YouTube channel, be sure and hit that subscribe button. Make sure not just to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well, and share this video with all of your friends, followers, and the like. But we also want to indicate and include that it's important that everybody voted. I want to make mention of that fact, that those of you who are listening, those of you who are watching us under the sound of my voice, I want to make sure that you guys voted August the 4th, that this is not something that just went over your head. This is not something that you just caught wind of, but you voted on August the 4th because you understand the importance and the significance of this inherent right as a citizen of this, not just the state of Michigan, but a citizen of this country, to exercise your right to vote. And I believe that your voice, your vote does count and does make a difference. And we're going to talk more about that in the last segment of this week's edition of the Wellness Check. But going back to the different contests here in the state of Michigan, another one, just to add to the first governor's race. So it sets up a contest coming in November for a governor. Obviously, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is the Democratic nominee, and John James is the Republican nominee, who basically just trounced all of his opponents on the Republican side, and namely Perry Johnson, who, when you look at him and you've seen any of his commercials, he reminds me of Montgomery Burns from The Simpsons. And if you saw him, he had Trump in his commercials and he's touting MAGA and everything. And it really, what it says to me is just how disconnected these Republicans are to reality. People are not interested in MAGA politics. They're not interested in being associated with Trump. He has the lowest approval rating in presidential history. I think it's at 32%. And this guy still doesn't understand that. And putting this man in your commercials and touting MAGA is not it's not a badge of honor. It's actually hurting him. And it ended up hurting his campaign. But I really think John James is going to get trounced in this coming November, to be quite honest with you, because Jocelyn Benson won the city of Detroit by 90% of the vote, and he won by 47%. So that lets you know right there, this race for governor is pretty much over with, to be quite honest with you. So John James, I think, is going to lose in November in a big way. But moving on to the U.S. Senate race, as I mentioned, Dr. Abdul and Congresswoman Haley Stevens had a very contested Senate race in the primary. U.S. Senate candidate Dr. Abdul Saeed is a part of the Democratic Socialists of America, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and Haley Stevenson is considered an establishment candidate. What's important to note about both of these candidates within the Democratic Party is you have this new progressive wing called the DSAs, the Democratic Socialists of America, who are considered to be like the new kids on the block, so to speak. And then you have the establishment Democrats like your Nancy Pelosi's, your Chuck Schumer's, your Raphael Warnock's, and Hakeem Jeffries, of course. You have these individuals who are a part of what we consider to be the establishment Democrats, and there is some tension there. We're going to talk a little bit about that in the second segment. Don't want to spend a lot of time with it in this segment here, but there is a call for unity after this contested race, which is a good thing. Dr. Abdul Saeed is calling for unity, and candidate Congresswoman Haley Stevens immediately conceded and endorsed the new Democratic nominee, Dr. Abdul Saeed, immediately, which is a good sign that things are going to be moving in the right direction in the Democratic Party. So I think that was a good thing right there. And then, of course, in the 12th Congressional District, we wanted to make mention of what happened there with, on the Democratic side. Well, actually, let me back up here. Now, for November, Dr. Abdul Saeed is running against Mike Rogers, who's a Republican nominee for U.S. Senate. And we're going to talk in this next segment about this race and what Republicans are doing to the smear campaign that's already started, Islamophobia that they're using to spread fear and hatred amongst Americans about this particular candidate. And really, it's just terrible what they're doing. And we're going to talk more about that in the second segment. But moving on to the 12th Congressional District, on the Democratic side, my good friend Chanel Jackson, who was a candidate, and we had her on the earlier episode, and she was able to introduce herself and to talk about her candidacy for the 12th Congressional District. She did lose that race to incumbent Rashida Tlaib, who won by 70% in the city of Detroit. It lets you know there that she has a very good chance of winning in November. So I think that seat is going to be safe, at least for the Democrats, this coming November. But she's going to be running against James Hooper, who won on the Republican side. He didn't have an opponent, so he won by 97%. He was the only candidate on the Republican side. But I think Rashida Tlaib's seat is going to be safe, and she knows that for this coming November. But moving on to another race that I was really thankful for the results that came through, and that is the 13th Congressional District, where Michigan State Representative Donovan McKinney was running against the incumbent Sri Thanadar, U.S. Congressman Sri Thanadar, for the 13th Congressional District. And he ended up, Sri Thanadar lost his seat. And I'm thankful for that, because this seat should go to, and has been has been a historically Black seat for years. Of course, the Honorable Congressman John Conyers held that seat for a long time before he resigned, or was forced to resign. I believe it was back in 2018 or so. And then they had a special election of where Brenda Jones, former council president Brenda Jones, won that seat for the remainder of his term. And then it was Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who ended up winning that seat, the 13th Congressional District. And then it was redistricted, and she moved to the 12th District, and then it became open, and Sri Thanadar won that seat And many say it was because he was an independent, wealthy millionaire and was able to spend a lot of money, of course. And usually that's what happens with a lot of these political offices. If you have a lot of money, usually money talks and you know what walks. But what I will say is what we're seeing, and it's apparent with this last race with U.S. Senate candidate Dr. Abdul Saeed and Congresswoman Haley Stevens, and we'll talk more about this in the second segment. She had $19 million of AIPAC money that was given to her, donated to her to run this race against Dr. Abdul Saeed. And he wasn't independently wealthy. He's, according to what I've been told, an epidemiologist and family. He lived in Michigan. He's not independently wealthy, but he's doing well for himself. But at the same token, he doesn't have the money that Haley Stevens had, and yet he still won, and won by a larger margin in the city of Detroit, but statewide, the race was much closer. But what I'll say is, and we'll talk more about this in the second segment, is showing you that money is not the answer in these political races. It's about grassroots, knocking on doors, rolling up your sleeves, and connecting with the people in your district. And that's what Dr. Abdul Saeed has done. And that's what other candidates like him are doing, and it's making a difference. In the same way Donovan McKinney did in the 13th Congressional District, knocking on doors, shaking hands, and being present. It's not about how much money you're spending, but it's about being present. It's about letting these voters know that you care, that you're concerned about their economic situation, that you're concerned about the high gas prices, you're concerned about what's going on in their lives. And that makes a difference in the polling booths. It does. And we're seeing the numbers. We're seeing that's what is happening, and that is what's taking place in this electorate and during this election cycle. In other words, by Sharif Thanadar, we'll see you when we see you, so to speak. We're glad that happened there. And now we have a better candidate that's more representative of that community in the 13th Congressional District. It's a lot. We unpacked quite a bit in this first segment again, but I wanted to just share those contests with you because there's a lot that's happening, and that happened on August 4th, and a lot that's going to happen, and the implications are huge and for us coming up this November. But again, make sure that you stick and stay. We're going to take our first commercial break. We're coming back, and we're going to be talking about this contested Senate race that Dr. Abdul Saeed won against Congresswoman Haley Stevens. We're going to do that on the other side of the break. It's the Thinking Out Loud radio show. We'll be right back. Are you a podcaster or someone looking to start a podcast? Looking for a space to bring your vision to life? Then look no further than the PodSpot. The PodSpot is a one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. Whether you're just looking for a space to record your next episode or you're looking for the 5-star treatment, the PodSpot has exactly what you're looking for. Just give Ray a call at 248-283-4866 or visit their website at thepodspot.studio for more information. The PodSpot, where great conversations come to life. All right, guys, we are back. And again, we are recording this week's episode from the PodSpot studios. Again, shouts out to my good friend Raymond Mosley for hooking us up. We are here recording this podcast episode, the Wellness Check Part 2 edition, right here at the PodSpot studios. And we're encouraging all of you who are podcasters and new podcasters that check out the PodSpot studio. Give them a call at 248-483-4866. 4866 for more information. They're going to give you the 5-star treatment. But as I said before the break, guys, we were talking about the contests, the contested races in the state of Michigan during this primary season, this election cycle that took place just a couple of weeks ago. And now in this segment, we're going to talk about the highly contested Senate race between Dr. Abdul Saeed and Congresswoman Haley Stevens. And I want to start first by saying this, because I'm going to tell you, I voted for Congresswoman Haley Stevens. And I did so because I found out later, talking to a friend of mine, more about Dr. Abdul Saeed. And I didn't have really anything against Congresswoman Haley Stevens, and I still don't. I think that she's a good candidate for U.S. Senate, and I think she would have been an effective candidate. But the Michigan voters have spoken. However, what I will say, and the reason I voted for her was because she worked closely with former President Barack Obama when he was in office in his first term, and helped with the rescue of the auto industry, and mentioned that in her campaign speeches. And I think that was one of the deciding reasons that I voted for Haley Stevens. However, after I was talking to a friend of mine who voted for and is a supporter of Dr. Abdul Saeed, he began to share with me the differences between the two candidates and why he's a better candidate and a better choice than Haley Stevens. And one of the reasons that he mentioned was, and this guy's younger than me, and I would say so Dr. Abdul Saeed, one of his high points, as I said earlier, is that he was a grassroots candidate, and he made it a point to shake hands and to meet and greet his voters and really knock on doors and introduce himself. And I think he really made an impact on the younger generation. I would say probably what Generation Z make up a lot of his supporters. And I say that because this young man who I was talking to began to educate me on Dr. Abdul Saeed, and he reminds me of New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani. He's a part of the Democratic Socialists of America, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Of course, you know who Senator Bernie Sanders is. And then you have New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who won a very historic election in New York a few months ago. Or actually, it might have been a little bit further than that or longer than that. But his leadership is still fairly recent. But nevertheless, what I will say is Dr. Abdul Saeed, he ran a grassroots campaign against Congresswoman Haley Stevens. And now that he's won, the Republicans have begun a smear campaign of Islamophobia, trying mispronouncing his name. Just saw today where Trump tweeted out on Truth Social that he's coming for your home and your belongings, trying to make him appear as if he's a terrorist, a domestic terrorist, or some kind of tyrant or something. And we all know who that person really is. It's the orange man in the White House. And what Republicans are doing is just basically deflecting. They're deflecting because they have no strategy outside of fear and hatred and fear-mongering. They're not running on policy. They're not running on anything beneficial to U.S. citizens. So all they have is to fearmonger, to race bait, and to make everyone scared of boogeyman that's not there. And it's not fair to Dr. Abdul Saeed because he is any of those things. If you do your research and know what you're talking about, you'll understand. And just like I admit, I did not know much about this gentleman, but I have done my research, and he is an upstanding citizen of this country. that is looking to do something positive for those in the state of Michigan. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see nothing wrong with that. We need that kind of support in the Democratic Party. We need that kind of voice in the Democratic Party. It should not be silenced. As if nothing else, what Republicans have shown us or showing us is that he is a formidable adversary. And they're showing us right not 24 hours after he won, Donald Trump is already out there mispronouncing his name and saying all kinds of things about him, along with his Republican opponent, Mike Rogers. And it really is showing you, those of you who are watching, that this man knows what he's talking about and he is the right man for the job. And so let's not get caught up in the race baiting and the Islamophobia that the Republican Party is spewing, because all they're trying to do is to distract you. That's all they're trying to do. And hear me, please hear me. That's all they've done throughout the Trump administration and back in 2016, and even now. This is all that they're doing, because they have nothing else to run on. He has been an abject failure in the White House. Everything he touches turns to dust. And he's also seeing that candidates that he has endorsed are losing in countless numbers, and his approval rating is in the toilet. This Iran war that he said was over months ago is still going on, and Iran is now refusing to talk to him and do any negotiating with him any further. So he is a man really without a country. He is a man basically on an island all by himself. And we're going to talk in the third segment about how Democrats can actually take back the House and the Senate, because he's in a very vulnerable state, and it's one that needs to really be discussed. But as we continue to talk about this contested Senate race between Haley Stevens and Dr. Abdul Saeed, again, as I said in the first segment, we always say money talks and you know what else walks. But in this particular case, money wasn't the answer, because Haley Stevens had $19 million to spend and she still lost. $19 million that she had to run her campaign, and she still lost. And he didn't rub it in her face, but what he did, which was very smart, he wanted to reach out, which he did, and she conceded, and he called for unity in the Democratic Party. And I think that is a very good thing to do. We need unity. Of course, I'm a man of faith and understand the importance of unifying not just this country, but us all being united. We're called the United States of America for a reason, but he understands that there needs to be unity in the Democratic Party. And we're going to talk in the third segment that if there's any virtue in anything coming out of the Republican Party, that is their superpower, unity. They are unified behind this clown of a president, because there's no way he could run roughshod in this country if the Republican Party was not the spineless group of men, white men that they are. And I guarantee you that them being unified behind closed doors and even in the media are the reasons that he's able to do what he has done and run roughshod in this country. But Democrats need to be unified. This Democratic Socialists of America and the establishment wing of the Democratic Party, they need to come together and establish a coalition, and they need to be on the same page. I am definitely in support of both sides of the Democratic Party. I stand in support with eventual House Speaker, who is now the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. I think that he's a brilliant black man and would do a great job as the Speaker of the House if he was blessed to serve in that capacity in November if Democrats take back the House. But I will say that there's still work that needs to be done. Most importantly, though, there needs to be some mending of the fences. There needs to be some coming together. There needs to be some kumbaya singing, and there needs to be some strategizing. Of course, we don't know. We're not in those meetings. We don't know what's going on. But I believe that the right people are in charge. The right people are there to make the correct and necessary decisions in order for this Democratic Party to move forward. But it's important that unity is the primary goal of this party. And we're going to talk in the third segment more about what the strategy should be for this coming November. I don't believe that there were any necessary losers per se on the Democratic side, because Haley Stevens would have been a great candidate as well, even though she was considered part of the establishment. But this rising progressive movement on the Democratic Party side is one that we should definitely pay close attention to, and for good reason, because there is a grassroots movement that is starting in this country. And I'll say this before we get ready to go to our last break. If nothing else, what this clown in the White House has done, along with his Republican cronies and counterparts, they have unwittingly sparked a movement around the country that people cannot wait for November. I believe that wholeheartedly, that if the election took place tomorrow, that you would see a record number of voters that will are ready to take this country back. And we're going to talk more about that, because there's something coming in November. I really believe it. And this Michigan primary, along with other primaries that took place around the country, and we're going to highlight some of those on the other side of the break. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. It's a Thinking Out Loud radio show. We'll be right back. Are you a podcaster or someone looking to start a podcast? Looking for a space to bring your vision to life? Then look no further than the PodSpot. The PodSpot is a one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. Whether you're just looking for a space to record your next episode, or you're looking for the 5-star treatment, the PodSpot has exactly what you're looking for. Just give Ray a call at 248-283-4866 or visit their website at thepodspot.studio for more information. The PodSpot, where great conversations come to life. All right, guys, we are back, and I hope you are enjoying this wellness check edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show that we're recording right here at the PodSpot studio. Again, my good friend Raymond Mosey's opened up his doors to us, our partner here with the Thinking Out Loud radio show. Thanking him so much for allowing us to be able to record this episode right from his studio. And again, any podcasters that are listening or watching us on our YouTube channel, before you hit that subscribe button, and even though we want you to hit that like button and share, we also want you to pick up the phone and call 248-483-4866 and get more information about the PodSpot Studios, so you can record your next podcast episode right here with Raymond Mosley, who's the proprietor of this great establishment. And so we're recording this week's edition, the Wellness Check edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show right here at the PodSpot studios. And we've been talking about a number of different things, unpacking the Michigan primary in the first segment of this week's show, talking about some of the contests, the governor's race, the U.S. Senate race, the 12th Congressional and the 13th Congressional districts, very highly contested races in the Michigan primary. And then we follow that up with talking about the U.S. Senate race with Dr. Abdul Saeed and Congresswoman Haley Stevens in this last segment here, talking about that contested race and how after he won, there was a call for unity within the Democratic Party to bring that progressive side and the establishment side together so they're not working against one another and they're all on the same page going into November, because the goal, guys, is for us to win back the House and the Senate so that we can now move the agenda for America forward. Primarily, and what I'll say is this: we want to see the first African-American Speaker of the House in Hakeem Jeffries. That is going to be what we are hoping for, what we are praying for this coming November. And I'm putting it out there. Those of you who are watching us, those of you who are listening under the sound of my voice, we want to make sure that happens. And your vote in November can make it happen. It is definitely possible. We can take the House, we can take Congress back and make Hakeem Jeffries the next Speaker of the House and get rid of that worm, Mike Johnson, because he does not deserve to be Speaker of the House. He's a minion for the clown in the White House, Donald Trump. And there definitely needs to be a change in that seat. And we want it to be Hakeem Jeffries. And so that is first and foremost for this coming November. We want to see that happen. But also, if Congress is able, if Democrats are able to take back Congress, we can now begin to right this ship in Washington. And if it means putting forth impeachment paperwork for this clown in the White House, we need to do that. That needs to be on the agenda, because I believe Congresswoman Maxine Waters said it best, that the next time you see me talking about Donald Trump, she wasn't coming to the State of the Union addresses, but she said the next time you see me, it's going to be me filing impeachment paperwork against you in November when we take back the House and the Senate. And so that's what we are looking for and hoping for in just a few months here. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take a coalition of voters. It's going to take the Democratic Party coming together to make this happen. And going back to the conversation I had with this young man who was a friend of mine, talking about the differences between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and what Republicans do, which in many ways is viewed as a superpower, because, like I said, if there's any virtue in anything that they do, they are united. And you might have one or two, maybe three or four defectors in the group, but they're called out. And in fact, you saw this happen with the confirmation of Todd Blanche, this jerk of an attorney general that was just appointed, that got through. There were a couple Republican senators who were saying they weren't going to vote in favor of him unless that slush fund legislation that Trump was trying to pass to get those individuals who were part of this January 6th mob that stormed the Capitol a couple of years ago, to get them money. If that was not put in writing, that whole piece was done away with, that they were not going to vote for him. And he put together some type of memo that was supposed to basically say in so many words that this was not going to happen. And so they ended up voting for him. And there were still only one or two Republican senators, Susan Collins being one of them, that didn't vote for Todd Blanche's confirmation. But for the most part, Republicans toe the party line. Republicans, they perpetuate and they proliferate the lie that the 2020 election was stolen. And when all of us know, and it's been confirmed in courtrooms across the country, that there was no election interference on any level. And yet, and Trump knows this, and everyone in the Republican Party knows this, but they refuse to speak the truth because they know the truth, as the Bible says, will set you free. But he's made millions of dollars off of this lie. And it's this lie that put him back in the White House. So why divert from that if in fact this is what your base is the reason they voted for you in the first place? But what's interesting about all of that really is their Republicans are not concerned about the truth. Their concern is whatever reality that they can create that people will believe. And that's the very definition of what a lie is. They're like in a courtroom, for example, in a court of law. It's not what you did. It's what they can prove that you did. And that is the Republican playbook. It's not a lie, it's not a lie, as George Costanza said it once in Seinfeld. It's not a lie if you believe it. And even Trump has said this. If you say something over and over again to people, they'll believe it. It won't be a lie anymore. But we have got to refute that. Democrats have got to push back more aggressively on the lies that the Republicans are telling us and telling the American people. Now, he can't lie to me. I see it. He can't be. I didn't vote for him in November. In November of 2024. So he's not my candidate. He's never been my candidate. I could see him coming from 20 miles away. So there's nothing that he's ever done to convince me that he's deserving of this seat in the White House. But it's those who voted for him who we blame the most for the reason we're in this state, that we've got to convince that he is not for you. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your family. He doesn't care about your job. He doesn't care about you, your livelihood. He does not care anything about you, even though he tries to make it seem that way. But you have to understand that he does not care anything about you. It is a grift. And you've heard people say it. You've heard the media. It's been reported in the media. This man has made $2.2 billion of personal wealth in office. Can you imagine? And we've said this before in other shows. Can you imagine if that happened with former President Barack Obama? If he was able to get that kind of money or able to raise that kind of money for himself in office, they would have impeached him a long time ago. He wouldn't have had the opportunity to do any of that. You saw the grief the Republicans gave him when he wore a tan suit that one time while he was in office. And yet this man here has really turned 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue into the Ringling Brothers Circus. We've seen pictures and images of what the White House looks like now. The reflecting pool looks like a swamp. This is the same place where Dr. King gave the speech at the Lincoln Memorial. This reflecting pool looks atrocious. It is unrecognizable, and he is at fault. Then on top of that, he's trying to build a $400 million ballroom that he claims is going to be a fortress of solitude or whatever. That is not necessary. it is amazing the amount of things and the amount of latitude that he's been given by the Republican Party, all because they are unified behind this man. And if nothing else, as a takeaway for this coming November, Democrats have got to be united behind the cause of getting this clown out of office and righting this ship that we're on and moving it in the right direction. First and foremost, making Hakeem Jeffries the first African-American Speaker of the House. That's got to be priority number one. We want to see that happen. And the only way that happens is we've got to go to the polls and vote in November. There's no excuses. There is no excuses. We've got to make this happen. And so, that being said, I want to say this to those of you who still feel trepidation about voting, because we've shared this in episodes before when we talk politics, because this is one thing we talk about on our Thinking Out Loud radio show quite often, and that is the importance of voting. If you don't believe that voting is important, all you have to do is take a step back and look at everything that Republicans are doing to try to interfere and to block your right to vote. The overturning of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Those types of things are done to keep you from voting. But before we even go there, I want to also talk about some other key races that took place in this past August primary. One race of note, Keisha Lance Bottoms. You probably remember her as the former mayor of Atlanta. She's running for governor of Atlanta, and she won her primary in August. And now is the Democratic nominee. And so we're pushing for and pulling for former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms in her bid for governor of the state of Georgia. Also, another key race that we just saw, Justin Pearson, a state representative in Tennessee, won his bid for U.S. Congress for Tennessee, and very excited about that, particularly because the overturning of the Voting Rights Act directly impacted the redistricting that took place in Tennessee. And it's important because what it showed was that the redistricting didn't work. The overturning of the Voting Rights Act didn't work. Those voters did not acquiesce to the Republican Party. They voted in large numbers, and Justin Pearson won his primary, and I think he's poised to win this coming November. He's definitely a rising star in the Democratic Party. If you don't know Justin Pearson, he's the young man that was what they tried to silence in the Tennessee state legislature a few years ago. Him and his partner, I forgot the guy's name. He has another legislature there that works closely with him, that they protested in the state legislature and they were silenced there. But the Tennesseans stood up, and Justin Pearson he won his primary bid and is looking to and poised to become the next U.S. congressman for the state of Tennessee. So we're excited about those two races. Wanted to definitely mention those two individuals. Shouts out to them both. We're going to be watching them very closely as we move into November. And so there's a movement that's going on right now, again, in the Democratic Party. And it's a movement that's going across this country. And people are going to the polls, and they're voting in mass numbers. Republicans see it. Republicans see it, and they're trying to do everything they can to stop this blue wave that's coming. It's a blue wave that's coming, and they're trying to stop the momentum in whatever way that they can. Trump is trying to do it with the Save America Act that's still sitting there. He's trying to get passed. It's not going to happen, which would drastically impede the voting rights of Americans across the country. And so whatever we do, we have to make sure that Save America Act does not pass, because it will do nothing but destroy America. It's not save America. It will destroy America. And Trump sees this. He sees the blue wave coming, and he's scared to death of it. He knows that his day of reckoning is coming in November. And the proof is in the pudding, as they used to say, because if voting did not matter, if voting was not important, then why would they be working so hard to keep you from being able to do so? Riddle me that. Why would it be so hard? Why are they trying so hard and so diligently to keep you from voting? Why are they continually lying about voting rights and trying to change the laws to prevent you from voting if your vote does not matter and if your vote doesn't count? If nothing else, that should embolden you. That should empower you. That should incentivize voting for you, to make sure that those that are in power now are no longer in power later, that your voice and your vote counts in November. And the only way you do that is if you take your souls to the polls in November and vote. That's the only way it's going to happen, guys. That is the only way it's going to happen. And I hope that this wellness check part 2 has opened your eyes about some things that are happening in the Democratic Party, that are happening in the Republican Party, and have encouraged you to, most importantly, go to the polls and vote. That is the one thing that we say on a consistent basis on this program and on this podcast, that voting is essential. Voting is important. Think about the lives of our civil rights leaders like Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy and Fred Shuttlesworth and Rosa Parks, those individuals who laid their life, C.T. Vivian and many others who laid their lives down so that we could have the right to vote. And what do? We squander it. We don't take advantage of it. We waste it. But we need to make a concerted choice and decision to go to the polls and vote in November. Don't let the narrative that the Republicans are trying to make about candidates on the Democratic side force you not to vote. Do your own research. Look them up yourself. You have all kinds of resources available to you to get the information you need about these candidates, but don't just go on what they're saying about them and cause what they say to keep you from the polls because you think that what they say is right. Give me a break. We cannot believe or trust anything that they're saying about any of our candidates. And if nothing else, we need to be pushing back on the rhetoric that they're spewing about these upstanding men. Now, nobody's perfect, of course. Everybody has their flaws. Everybody has their issues. But at least we can say on the Democratic side, at the very least, these men and women are trying their best to serve this country and to serve its citizens and the way that they should be treated and the way they should be appreciated and recognized. And so that's the message that we wanted to share in this Wellness Check Part 2 edition of the Thinking Out Loud radio show. Guys, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, again, hit that subscribe button, like and share this video. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. That way you won't miss another episode of the Thinking Out Loud radio show. Guys, we're continuing our discussion. We'll be doing so throughout these next few weeks leading up into the November general. So we'll be hearing more about the significance of voting. We're even going to be trying to get some candidates on our airs if possible. And if you're able to help us in that regard, we'd appreciate that as well. But guys, we're getting ready to go to our last break. And when we come back, we're going to give you our thought of the week. It's a Thinking Out Loud radio show. We'll be right back.